out of coffee. My nootropic choice. I'm not out of coffee. I have to walk 8 feet to get it.
Wow, well, that's the problem with the not having modern convenience of making making it the ability to just have the coffee levitate and brought over to you.
Yeah, I was just talking to about this. We were talking about it in the context of the new iWatch that has health monitoring capacities above and beyond what these other Fitbit bits and iWatches have had in the past. It's basically it's a constant heart monitor. It's something that would be of real use to life extensionists. And my friend was talking about how she wants to have AIs that are able to make all manner of recommendations throughout the day along these lines, for calorie restriction and dietary choices, as well as the constant monitoring. And there is that thing that you can buy. It costs about 20 grand. It's a little attachment that kind of sits above your range and cooks for you. It's a cooking robot, and it supposedly works pretty well in this kind of limited way. So that guy kind of exists. He's not quite a butler yet, but
wow.
Yeah,
I want that.
I want that too. Make me some sushi.
Yeah, right. There's so many amazing things that are coming our way that when you describe that, it's not even it's not shocking.
Yeah.
If you really understand the whole movement of what's going on with futuristic technologies, transhumanism, all of this good stuff, you just realize that all of it's coming. And if you understand exponential growth, then it's coming a lot sooner than a lot of people predict, because a lot of people tend to think very linearly.
Yes. And this is a Futurist New Deal podcast, and I'm talking to a wonderful content creator, Charlie Kam. How should I introduce you, Charlie?
Whatever you just said sounds fine to me.
I really enjoyed watching these videos. There's so many great references to things of interest, to techno-optimists. A few references to different books by Ray Kurzweil and a lot of other prominent individuals in those. So I'm looking forward to chatting about that, and we're gonna play those videos we're gonna edit them right into this podcast, so people can enjoy those after we talk about them a little bit. Am I correct in saying that How to Build a Brain I'm sorry. I'm confusing the book.
If I Had to Build a Brain was based on Ray Kurzweil's How to Create a Mind.
Right.
You're trying to say.
I crossed the streams there. Sorry.
No, that's absolutely right. So, I mean, it's probably easier for me to talk about these in the order in which they were conceived and created and the purposes for them. Like the first video that I ever did was called "I Am the Very Model of a Singularitarian," which I think is the most popular one. It got the most watch and most views, and I think if you look on YouTube, it's got like 150,000 or something like that. I mean, it's been a lot of years, but still, the way that kind of worked was I've been a big fan of Ray Kurzweil's and the whole futuristic technology movement for as long as I can remember. It kind of started, I think, because I grew up as a science-oriented, from a science family. We weren't religious at all. We were basically, Big Bang Theory and evolution, and here we are. So, I was always perplexed with the idea of, well, all my friends, they know where they're going when they die. I'm not going anywhere. It became very existential even when I was a little, 13 years old. And I started to read a lot of different books and a lot of things about different concepts and ideas. And eventually, as I got older, I started to look into other things, like I found out about cloning, and I thought, oh, well, here's something that could work. If we could clone body parts, and then we could live forever. Something, though, so I was reading books by people like Eric Drexler, Engines of Creation, or even books by Feynman, Richard Feynman, his early works of stuff, and eventually Ray Kurzweil, when he came out with his book Age of the Intelligent Machine in 1990. And
big moment for
what
transhumanism.
Really, what happened was when my dad was diagnosed with cancer back in 1995, and it was just very upsetting for me. I had a background in biochemistry, and I was going to med school, and I was studying. I also had a background in music and all that. But when he was diagnosed with cancer, it just rocked my world emotionally, psychologically, and everything else, because the idea of death was really upon me in a very stark, personal way. And I was so frustrated that there was no cure. We were approaching the 21st century, and there's still no cure for cancer. And I barely knew anything about cryonics yet. I kind of heard of it, but like many people, I thought, I heard a lot of the nonsensical skepticism about how it doesn't really work, or it's a scam or something. And then he passed away very quickly. He had a rather aggressive cancer. And so he died in 96. But it really prompted me to get more involved in the whole transhumanist community, with the idea that not everybody should have to go through suffering of a loss of a loved one, not when we have technology the way it's advancing, especially the way Ray had shown it in some of his books. He came out with the Age of the Spiritual Machine in 2000, and that really amazed me. That was an amazing book. I think everybody should read that still, if they haven't.
Read it again.
Read it again. And the thing is, it really put me on track to start getting involved in learning more about people that were involved in the futuristic technologies. And I also wanted to see how I can spread the word. And then I found out there was an organization called the World Transhumanist Association, the WTA. And I saw that they had conferences around the world. And so I thought, I'm going to start attending those. And I went to one. I went to some other conferences, but I went to the first one I went to for the WTA was in Caracas, Venezuela, which was hosted by Jose Cordero. And if you're a part of the transhumanist community, I'm sure you know who Jose is. He just ran for parliament in Europe. Anyway, when I went there, I was amazed that they had all these intelligent people talking about life extension. But it was a rather modest conference. It was in Caracas. And I thought, wow, I think if I hold one of these, I want to make it bigger. I want to spread the word like crazy, So, and it was also the year before Ray was coming out with his next book called The Singularity is Near. And I was really anticipating that, because I was a fan. So I knew when his next thing was coming out. And so I put a pre-order in for that book, and I got an early copy of it. And when you're passionate about something, you go crazy. And I started reading that book as soon as I got a hold of it. I probably finished it within a day or two. It was 600 pages. And I thought that was the most profound book I ever read. And I thought everybody should read it, but I knew not everybody was going to read it. So I thought, you know what? I have a background in science. I just read this book. I have a background in music. If I use my skill sets, I'll just turn it into a song. So, in the book, he coined a term called the Singularitarian, which was someone who follows the tenets of what it means to be to believe in the singularity, that it's approaching, and live their life accordingly. So I synthesized all those points that I thought were important about singularity and being a singularitarian, and then I thought back to my music days when I was a little kid performing in Gilbert and Sullivan musicals, and one of them was the Pirates of Penzance, and in that musical was a song called I Am the Very Model of a Modern Major General, and it had a lot of words in it, and I thought, that's perfect. I'll just take all those words out, repurpose it with the singularity, ideas that I came up with, and then I'll have a song. So I did that, and I created I Am the Very Model of a Singularitarian, because the word singularitarian fits so nicely in place of modern major general. It's got the same cadence and everything. So I wrote the song, I put it on the internet, and eventually it found its way to Ray Kurzweil, and he became a fan of the song. And then I got invited to his company party at Kurzweil Technologies in Boston. And I got to be friends with him and the people that worked for him and everything. And I thought, okay, this is a perfect opportunity now, because I said, look, I want to host a conference that'll spread the word of futurism, so people can start to really grasp what's going on here and what he's writing and all the movement. So I asked Ray. I said, "Look, if I host a conference, would you be my keynote speaker?" He agreed to that. He said, "Oh yeah, no problem." He liked the song so much, he was happy to do that. So I contacted the World Transhumanist Association and I said, "Look, I went to your conference in 2005. I'd love to host a conference because I see you do them internationally." And they didn't really know me that well, but I said, "Look, I can get Ray Kurzweil. I saw you never had him before." And they said, "Yeah, okay. If you get Ray, you can host it." Okay, great. So Ray said he'd be on board, and once I had Ray on board, well, I had everybody. Then Aubrey de Grey was on board, and Jose Cordero, and Ben Gertzel, and Natasha Vita-Moore, and Max Moore, and Martine Rothblatt, and Peter Diamandis, and we had all the top dogs of the transhumanist movement. And here I was hosting it now, and I was the MC for it. And I hosted in Chicago. It was a 3-day conference. I held it at the Field Museum. We had so it was pretty cool because we're talking about futuristic technologies there, surrounded by dinosaurs. And but even though I had all these great scientists, I had about 30 different scientists from around the world coming to speak. And even Marvin Minsky, when he was still alive back then, and he was Ray Kurzweil's mentor. So I really had a great lineup, but I still couldn't sell all the tickets until I decided I'd better get a celebrity. And I had to get the right celebrity because that would sell it out. And I thought, who's perfect? What celebrity represented a TV show or a movie where humanity, didn't implode or kill itself, but was successful at living forever and boldly go where no man has gone before, if that's a hint. So, of course, Star Trek made the most sense. I contacted Hollywood, the agents and such. And I finally got a hold of the agent for Shatner. And the agent's like, "Oh, he's not going to." I said, "Will he come and speak at a conference?" "Oh, he's not going to come into a conference." I said, "Well, we got a lot of good speakers. We got Ray Kurzweil." And he's like, "Oh, let me get back to you on that." Well, it turns out Shatner was a fan of Ray Kurzweil. So he agreed. So all of a sudden, we had Shatner, and then the tickets sold out like crazy. So I knew that I was going to have this conference, and I knew that Ray was my keynote speaker, and I had this song called "I Am the Very Model of a Singularitarian." So I created a video for it, where I basically just sang it. And that's the creation of that first music video called "I Am the Very Model of a Singularitarian." And when Ray came out when he was about to come on stage, it was right after I had Shatner, because I kept Ray as the final. I'm still, still loyal to Ray being the keynote. So Shatner was second to last. And then when he left the stage, and I said, "All right, and our final speaker is Ray. He's so popular. People are now doing music videos about him." And I showed the music video. Everybody cheered. People even got up for it. And then Ray came out, and we became really good friends after that. And so that's that first video. I don't know if you want to show that one to the viewers. Yeah.
I am the very model of a singularitarian. I'm combination transhuman and modalistic tropian. Aggressively, I'm changing all my body's biochemistry because my body's heritage is altered genetically. Replacing all the cells these bunches here just temporarily. The pattern of my brain embodies weather's continuity. I'll try to improve these patterns with optimal biology. But how will I do that? I need to be smarter. Ah, yes. I'll expand my mental faculties by merging with technology.
Expand his mental faculties by merging with technology. Expand his mental faculties by merging with technology. Expand his mental faculties by merging with technology.
And with a new technology, renewable clean energy, remove our pathogens and overcome hunger and poverty. In short, I am a transhuman, a modalistic tropian. I am the very model of a singularitarian.
In short, he is a transhuman, a modalistic tropian. He is the very model of a singularitarian.
Knowledge in all forms, music, art, science, and technology. Our brains and bodies all precious in any loss of tragedy. Important recognitions and insights are what we should retain while we destroy all of the useless information that remains. And when a person dies, we lose a profound pattern tragically. And the part of ourselves that interacted with them literally. Religious folks may rationalize that death is really something good. Something good? Something good? Huh? I think they changed our minds of singularity were understood.
I think they changed our minds of singularity were understood. I think they changed our minds of singularity were understood. I think they changed our minds of singularity were understood.
I create and appreciate all of the knowledge that I know to greater order, even though complexity I know may grow. In short, I am a transhuman, a modalistic tropian. I am the very model of a singularitarian.
In short, he is a transhuman, materialistic tropian. He is the very model of a singularitarian.
The purpose of the universe is that of all our human lives. Since no aliens have come forth this much, we can now rationalize. We'll spread our thoughts with nanobots that know how to self-replicate. Through solar system, Milky Way, or anywhere we designate. Ideas are our products that will solve the problems of our fate, and new ideas for the problems we can't yet articulate. Let's leverage all our knowledge from the returns that accelerate. Returns that accelerate? Sounds familiar. Ah, yes, the law of accelerating returns by Ray Kurzweil. Of course, of course. So the outcome of the universe is something we can contemplate.
The outcome of the universe is something we can contemplate. The outcome of the universe is something we can contemplate. The outcome of the universe is something we can contemplate.
The singularity is near, but I won't be indifferent. In case something should go awry, I'll do my bestest to prevent. Because I am a transhuman, a modalistic tropian. I am the very model of a singularitarian.
Because he is a transhuman, modalistic tropian. He is the very model of a singularitarian.
Yes! Singularity! Woohoo! Singularity is here! Singularity is near! Singularity!
The thing that I love about this, it's a thing that concerns me with our movement is that there are people who view life extensionists or people who embrace the singularitarians, people who embrace the acceleration of technology, people who are taking an interest in more robust AI. There are people who view these, they refer to us as Luciferians, these anti-transhumanist people. And it's why it's nice to see a viral hit like I am the very model of a singularitarian. It's funny. It's no one is going to look at this and be thinking about someone who is in league with the devil or some kind of foolishness like that. That's an important note. That's an important note to hit I think for people in our community. And so I thank you for that. And I think people can enjoy this on a lot of levels as well. People who are maybe not specifically life extensionists or tech acceleration people. There's a couple of ideas I think in this video that are of particular interest. Is the idea that you mentioned in this song, the idea of a person passing and this tremendous loss of information, this sort of systems theory of the human mind, and people. And right now we have a model where people pass away and their life's work is essentially lost. All of this, everybody, no matter who they are, has an incredible amount of knowledge that they've amassed and experiences they've amassed. And each one of those deaths represents a tremendous tragedy, not only on the personal level, but in that regard as well, losing all of that data. I like that you were able to talk about that in that song, and also about mind uploading. So just in the last week, you probably saw some of this material that Elon Musk presented about some new information about the technology behind a Neuralace company. So we're starting to move into an era of brain-machine interfaces that's a little closer to maybe this technology itself will accelerate the reverse engineering of the human mind and ultimately mind uploading and that sort of thing by allowing people to just be doing a lot more work using these kinds of devices. How do you feel about Neuralace? Is that something that is of interest to you? Do you think that it advances your other goals?
Oh yeah, I look forward to it. I'm really a couple of things I want to mention. Number one, when I did that video and I created that back in 2006 to show it in 2007, a lot with regard to society has changed. I mean, this movement is so much more embraced now, and there's so many more conferences and things going on that it's amazing to see that swell of interest that's occurred in just a relatively short time. When you think about it, with regard to Elon, it wasn't that long ago where he was kind of saying some fearful things about the idea of, AI might be a problem or it's the most dangerous, but it seems like he's kind of changed his tune, embraced it, because the idea of Neuralace, I mean, that's fantastic. And I don't know enough about the details of what he's doing with it But if it is anything like he's describing and that I'm hoping, that'd be fantastic. I'm all for it. I think ultimately that's what's going to happen anyway. You know, we're gonna connect our minds with the clouds. And again, that's something Ray's been talking about for all his books. I'm just excited to see it coming to fruition. And I think the biggest problem that people have is they're not understanding the exponential rate of growth. Many people still think things are growing linearly rather than exponentially. And if you understand the exponential growth, you'll know that these things are coming very soon, a lot sooner than we think or give credit to.
And speaking of Musk, I think that could be a segue to the next of your videos. Okay, I'm gonna not make the same mistake again.
So all right, let me just.
The book is called How to Build Mind. Go ahead.
So what happened was this, and I got to follow up a little bit, and I won't be as long as the first one. The first one was just let you know how it all started.
No, please.
What happened was, so at the end of that conference, by the way, it was the third day. It was all done. Shatner went home, but we had a dinner for all the speakers, and we were still in the museum having the dinner. We're at all these big white cloth round tables. Immediately to my left was Ray Kurzweil, and immediately to his left was Peter Diamandis. And everybody was coming up congratulating me how great they were and happy they were. I mean, how great the conference was and how happy they were. And Ray turned to me and says, "Yeah, Charlie, it was a great conference." And Peter and I were just talking about doing something academic. And I said, "Well, that's fantastic. That's kind of the whole point of my conference, was to make things bigger and spread the word and such." And it was about a little over a year later, they launched Singularity University. And Ray actually made mention of it at the first graduating class to Peter when Ray was on stage at Singularity University. He says, "Well, Peter, you remember about a year ago we were in that dinner in Chicago?" And so it was kind of nice to know that came, that there was that kind of help to make things happen. I mean, I'm not taking credit for it, but that's where they met and where they were talking, and it kind of came to fruition. So
that's pretty amazing. These are the two highest luminaries. Certainly, Ray Kurzweil is on the top of everybody's list as a father of contemporary transhumanism. You also, I don't know the full particulars of these relationships or the timeline, but around that time, 2006 was when Transcendant Man was being produced. That was released in 2009. William Shatner was also made an appearance in that film with Ray Kurzweil. So,
well, that's because of my conference. So what happened was, well, I'm credited as one of the producers on there because Barry Ptolemy, who was the director, got the rights to shoot the movie of Transcendent Man, and he contacted me and asked if he could come and do videos shoots at my conference. And he wanted to, of course, include Shatner because that was probably arguably the biggest name in the movie. And I said, yeah. And they were asking me if they wanted to pay me. I said, look, I don't want to pay. You don't have to pay me anything. Just do a good job and let's spread the word. That's my goal, is to spread the word. But they gave me credit as a producer on the movie for that, because otherwise I don't think they would have had Shatner in that film. Obviously, that's where they got it. So yeah, that was fun. And then Ray also did another film that most people don't know about. It was called The Singularity is Near. It was produced by Martine Rothblatt. It was a docudrama, and it was about an avatar that eventually gets enough consciousness that it claims consciousness and wants personhood. And then it gets a lawyer to represent it, and goes before a judge, and it has Tony Robbins as a cameo to help turn the avatar into more of a human. It was a fun video. It doesn't get much airtime, but if you Google it or look for it, you'll see it. It was called The Singularity is Near, and they actually put my song in that in the credits. I'm the very model of a Singularitarian, except they said, "Oh, Charlie, we love your song. We want to put it in there, but it's a little bubbly. Can you make it darker?" I'm like, "Okay, yeah, no problem." So I just took the song, and instead of singing it, "I am the very model of it," I took out the chorus, and I just sang it like a Darth Vader. "I am the very model of a Singularitarian." And then they're like, "Oh, we love it." And they put it in the film. getting back to this. So anyway, what happened? So the conference was such a success that Ray and I became good friends after that. And he started inviting me to his company parties in Boston, where he had Kurzweil Technologies. This is, the company that he had out there. So I didn't want to go empty-handed, to a company party. And I thought, oh, you know what? And he was talking about doing a new book called, he was calling it How to Create a Brain. And I said, okay. And he kept putting it off, and he wasn't done with it yet, but he invited me to his party. So I thought, I already knew Ray's concepts. I kind of knew how the book was going to go. So I said, all right, Ray, I'm going to bring a video that's going to talk about, a parody of your book. And he's like, oh, that's great. So I got the video clip from, I remembered Wizard of Oz. By the way, that's Ray's favorite movie. And there's a clip where, Dorothy and the Scarecrow are talking about, and how he felt bad that he doesn't have a brain. And it was, and so I took that clip and I repurposed it with my voice. I did the voiceovers of both Scarecrow and Dorothy. Dorothy sounds like a female Monty Python character, but but I did a good job on the Scarecrow voice. And anyway, I reinterpreted it based on what Ray wrote, what he would do. So I call it if I had to build a brain. It was based basically on Ray's book, How to Create a Mind. So if you want to show that one.
Oh, I'm a failure because I haven't built a brain. Well, what would you need for a brain if you built one? Need? Why, if I built a brain, I'd need a recursive kind of searching, self-organized networking, evolutionary gains. Each design would be competing with the losers being beaten if I had to build a brain. I would need some seeds of knowledge, like the kind you get in college, but without the years of strain. The rest you'd be automate neural nets and algorithms if you had to build a brain. Oh, I would need some speed, computing parallel massively. My DNA substrate's too slow for me, so my new brain would have to be moving fast with the electronics, or faster with photonics. Either way, there'd be some gain. There would be great improvement with accelerating movement if I had to build a brain.
Whoa! We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful wizard of Oz. We hear he is a whiz of a whiz, if ever a whiz there was. If ever a whiz there was, the wizard of Oz has won because of the wonderful things he does. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful wizard of Oz.
If I Had to Build a Brain is based on How to Build a Mind by Ray Kurzweil. It's not the least controversial of techno-optimist ideas, the reverse engineering of the human mind. I view it a little bit in the way that I view initiatives to go to Mars. I definitely believe that there is a very good time in which we should do that. I think that there is also a point on the opposite end of the spectrum where too many resources could be put into this project in the near term, rather than focusing on more earthbound matters that would accelerate technology in other ways, the Neuralase kind of thing, and then having a critical mass towards moving off-world, reverse engineering the human mind. But I think reasonable people can differ on these timelines and approaches. And I did read, I haven't read all of Ray Kurzweil's books, but I have read most, and I really did enjoy How to Build a Mind. It's an incredible book. And it's a really wonderful homage to that in the form of how to build a brain. You made some cameos in some of these videos.
Oh yeah, well, in some, yeah, I mean, well, okay, so, and by the way, to your point, let's just not. I agree with you. I mean, if it was up to me, I would put all resources towards life extension first, because it's very similar to the old. The analogy of going on an airplane. If the oxygen mask comes down, put it on your face before the person next to you if they need help. Because if we die, what good is Mars, a colony on Mars, if we're dead, right? So like, everybody needs to figure out how we do life extension so we can live the next bridge to the next bridge to live, so if we can live another 50 years, that'll get us to another 100 years and so on, and the, escape velocity. What is it? That's escape velocity of death, or life, whatever way you want to look at that.
Yeah.
So, but you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
to your
longevity,
point, I
escape.
think I mean, putting resources on going to Mars right now, like, I think we should be focusing on life extension, and that's the most important thing first.
I do too. And I also think that there's remediation efforts, or the prospect of building underground or underwater in the event of certain catastrophes. Those things are a tiny fraction of the cost of what it would take to transport a large number of people off world. So the idea that we need to get off world is an important one for the coming centuries. But I think these other things are more realistic for the coming decades. And I think I agree with you. To my mind, life extension and super longevity is the thing that everyone in our community should have at the top of their list. And it's why, people have criticized the Futurist New Deal for focusing on these e-governance issues, these economic policy issues, and not always talking about. But the idea is to be setting the stage for a culture that is accommodating to life extension for as many people as possible. The larger number of people who are set up for that, the more we see network effects towards other techno-singularitarian effects. So I hope that people can recognize that this platform, even though it's framed in early 21st century political language and initiatives, that it is very much about life extension.
Oh yeah, and another thing to that point too about the idea of off-world and all, again, and this is so critical that I'm going to keep coming back to it probably. Exponential growth needs to be second nature in people's minds, because if they understand exponential growth of technology, of information technology and computational powers, then you're going to realize that whatever took 1,000 years is only going to take is going to take 10 years. And if Ray Kurzweil is right about exponential growth, which is what I'm referring to, of computational powers, well, by 2045, we will have reached a point where instead of it takes 2 years for things to double like it might now for computational growth, by 2045, according to his graph, computational powers will be doubling instantaneously. Now, if they're doubling instantaneously, and we have that kind of wealth of knowledge, and we in the between now and then are going to be merging with technology, which I see we're already kind of doing. Even the Neuralink, we're at the rudimentary stage of it, but really you can see pretty soon it's going to get really amazing. So if that's the case, and we do merge with technology, and at some point, like Ray talks about in his books, the majority of our body will be robotic rather than, it'll be a technological substrate rather than a biological one. That means then we are going to, not far from now, because the growth of technology at this exponential rate, we will basically have cyborg bodies, and it'll be a lot easier for us to be able to travel to Mars and to live on Mars if we want to. Where we are basically, like the Iron Man suit, only in reverse in a way. Like Iron Man in the movies, he put a suit on so that he could go and fly and do all that. Well, imagine that we actually replace most of our bodies, and all we have is maybe our brain, and everything else is functional. That's coming, and at some point, not that far. It's not like 100 years, because remember, if it took 1,000, like if whatever took 1,000 years only takes 10 years, well then, at some point when the singularity hits, 1,000 years is going to be comprised of maybe 10 minutes. So we're going to be really advancing at stages that we can't even comprehend right now. But we are going to be these cyborg bodies, so it'll be a lot easier if we wanted to go to Mars. Why bother now, struggling, risking lives to get to a place like Mars? Like Mars, where it's going to be so hard for us to be able to. My point is that once we get to robotic bodies, it'll be a lot easier to go to somewhere like Mars if we choose to. So why struggle so much now trying to make it like, if the idea is that we're going to terraform it and put oxygen on there, I mean, it's a hard undertaking what he wants to do, you know, Musk or anybody. And I think it'd be better if we just focus on life extension, living indefinitely, making our bodies invulnerable to a lot of the radiation or problems that we would face if we wanted to go first, and then think about that, so we can approach it in a way that we can, you know, make it more climate favorable to our new, you know, cyborg bodies. Anyway, sorry to get off that. So,
hey, Charlie, just in the last, just on the 21st, oh, there we go. On the 21st, George Church, who's arguably the most accomplished geneticist alive, and very much a life extensionist. He's made, you know, bold statements about things of this kind. You know, when the Chinese CRISPR baby furor was going on, he was the one person, I think, who stood back and said, we have to kind of look at both sides among his peers. One person who stepped back and said, we have to look at both sides of this. You know, there's a calculus that needs to be done in making these choices. You know, this HIV is a serious problem, is a serious condition, and we have to be willing to maybe take some steps to try and cure it. So he, and also this just this week, he has a plan for redesigning humans. The Harvard geneticist plan, George Church's plan for redesigning humans, and it describes a number of proteins and a number of gene therapy approaches that all are leading towards life extension and enhancement. And this is kind of from a guy who has a little bit of he's viewed a little differently than other people in our community. He has a different kind of platform. So for him to be putting himself out there again and saying this basically in favor of life extension, you know, like you said, you know, in 2006, this was viewed as emerging science. Now it's viewed as mainstream science, and that's a big leap for our community.
Yeah, and I'm all in favor of George Church. I'm a George Church fan. So, you know, I agree with them. And by the way, you know, what's the alternative? We're gonna stop it all? We're not gonna. The technology's not gonna stop. You know, we can say like, oh, we shouldn't be doing it, but who's gonna stop China, and who's gonna stop any country or anybody anywhere? You know, it was pretty foolish back when George Bush decided to put a moratorium on stem cell research, because it didn't stop it. All it did was flourish in, you know, Germany and parts of Asia. So, you know, that was just waste of nonsensical time. I think, you know, Church is right, and I think we need to try all these different things. I mean, there's good and bad to every new technology. That's something that Kurzweil talks about too. He even mentions it started with fire a million years ago. You know, so I don't see that we should be putting any kind of it's good to have certain, you know, we want to make sure we're safe, but you know, you got to try things. You can't put restrictions so much that you stifle things for no reason other than it goes somewhere else. You know, it's coming, and yes. It's better if we have it out there and everybody's kind of watching everybody else, and there is open, you know, everything. Transparency is important in this, and I think it's better if we just say, okay, you're going to do that, let's everybody watch it. Because if you try to tell somebody not to do it, somebody's going to do it anyway, and then it's going to be like, oh, maybe we should have been watching that. So
it's interesting. It's interesting because I was talking with E.M. Adams about the role of DARPA in techno progress in the 20th and early 21st century, which their role has been enormous. People maybe sometimes want to discount that in talking about these phenomena, but you know, they literally these Pentagon organizations literally were the incubators for, you know, 24 out of the 25 technologies that are making this kind of conversation possible. and also even to this day, allowing for serving as an incubator, allowing for offering these technologies and support to startups who are developing this sort of thing. It's still an ongoing thing. It's a point that I talk about. What in this campaign, what is the role of Pentagon spending going forward? But certainly in this specific regard, the role has been very, very positive. And now we're kind of maybe running into a situation where some sense of fiscal conservatism or wanting to maintain the integrity of existing corporations and so forth will tend to maybe be moving some of those innovations to other locations. Like you said, if we have some kind of digital rights management that slows some of these things or hinders some of these things, then people are, like Ben Goertzel, going to Hong Kong and working on, and tending to work on things. Not that that's the reason that he went, but that's the brain drain tendency. And the thing, I lost my train of thought.
That's all right. I think I know where you're going. I mean, it's all, but you're right about everything you just said. And I think that, DARPA's been a very important part of this. And and again, they're going to keep moving forward. So the idea that any of this stuff should even be stopped or anything is silly, actually, because it's not going to stop. It's going to be done somewhere, somehow. Anyway, I think
I do remember one thing I was going to say. Sure. So last year, Ted Cruz, and who would be described as one of those fiscal conservatives, social conservatives, kind of arch conservative guy, but he headed a Senate discussion that was on C-SPAN and so forth on AI safety, but it was from even though this is a conservative guy, but he was basically talking about the necessity also for advancing these technologies here in the United States, and even in spite of these concerns that he would have or people like him would have, that the foremost in his mind was making sure the United States remains a sort of base of operations of Silicon Valley and of techno progress generally. So I mean, that's something that most people are pretty united on. We can agree on, we can disagree with people like this on a lot of things as it relates to techno-optimist concerns, but maintaining the U.S. as this sort of DARPA and incubator type place is definitely on everybody's radar.
Yeah, and I remember that too, and I'm happy. I was happy that was the case. For someone like that we may not agree with on a lot of things, but I do think that there's probably something to the effect, or something to the fact that a lot of the AI and a lot of companies that involve it have a lot of money, and they'd probably be good supporters for someone like him. So maybe the money helps him motivate him. I don't know. I don't want to disparage, whether his motivations were. I don't know, but I do think that there is kind of a little bit of a universal a priority for that. Like all parties seem to think, like even with climate change, there's not agreement. But when it comes to having AI and having the best of that in our country, it does seem to be like something that I think everybody agrees on all political scales. So that's good. I'm happy about that.
Yeah, and a guy like Peter Thiel, who's running this AI safety thing out of Southern California. And working with guys like Elon Musk on that, we mentioned that Elon Musk was talking in rather apocalyptic terms about AI a few years ago, and that line of thought, which he popularized in many ways, sort of is one of the underlying arguments for Neuralace, that we need to advance a more agile and connected human mind, something that would be able to also manage these what is basically the AI superintelligence, but a guy like Peter Thiel who is somebody who has manipulated data in some of these ways, insofar as they exist in rudimentary forms. He's somebody who has a company that exists to that end. But even he is wanting to democratize these things, in recognizing the awesome power of advanced algorithms of this kind, and wanting to make sure that they're not being even though he would be the kind at the top of the list of guys who would be in control of that if there was a list. Even he is recognizing that maybe having those guys as the sole arbiters of that power is not the best approach when you're talking about something that is so radically different and has potential for changing so many institutions and organizations.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting the strange number of cross section of bedfellows that occur with this movement. You have people from all over the place, but they all agree on something that is to our benefit. So I'm kind of happy about that.
The one that I hadn't seen that I was just able to watch, thanks to your video share, was the Favorite Things parody. Set that up for us.
Oh yeah. So obviously what happened was, so like I said, Ray Kurzweil invited me to his company party. I went with the How to Build a Brain, and then I got invited again the following year, and he didn't have any new book coming out, so I thought, well, he's a futurist. What's a futurist's favorite things? When that came out of my mouth, I was like, oh, Ray, futurist favorite things, few of my favorite. Okay, that's easy. So, I went and I found that clip. I took out, the words, and then I repurposed it about futurist favorite things. I even made mention of Ray Kurzweil books, because a lot of people they accuse him of being overly optimistic. They always he's the optimist, but he always points out that if you read his books carefully, he addresses the potential for bad things to happen too. It's just that he doesn't dwell on it, but he talks about it. It's not like he doesn't know that they're there. He's not naive. But I do in the parody that we're about to watch, this one, a futurist favorite things, I do mention, like, when you feel bad, all you got to do is read Kurzweil books and you'll feel great again. So again, I do the voices in here, just so you'll know it's not actually, Julie Andrews with a cough, or it's me doing Julie Andrews' voice. And then the funny thing was, what happened was the song ended and there was some dialogue, and I started thinking about, oh wait, I can make some funny dialogue here too, with some interesting statements about Luddites and things like, how there's oppression. And I think if you watch it, you'll see what I mean.
Well, now, if anything scares me and I'm feeling unhappy, I just try and think of new things.
What kind of thing?
Let me see, new things. Dyson spheres. Green energy. Lifelike avatars. Supercomputers that keep getting faster. Brand new technology to fight disaster. Bright scientists with a theory of strings. These are a futurist's favorite things. Gene therapy that can make us live longer. Virtual worlds where we're better and stronger. Molecular manufacturing machines. These are a futurist's favorite things. Nanobots that help us fight off diseases. Merging with robots before they don't need us. Multiverses and dimensions unseen. These are a futurist's favorite things. When there's Luddites, talk of grey goo. When I'm feeling sad, I simply remember to read Kurzweil books, and then I don't feel so bad.
Does he really work?
Of course he does. You try it. What things do you like?
Paradigm shifts, cryonics, photonics, cloning body parts.
No school.
No more wars.
telepresence, teleporting, operations, bionic bodies, nanoscience, parasites, computronium.
Curing the cold, singularity. Supercomputers that keep getting faster. Bright new technologies to fight disaster. Bright scientists with the theory of strings. These are a futurist's favorite things. Gene therapy that can make us live longer. Virtual worlds where we're better and stronger. Molecular manufacturing machines. These are a futurist's favorite things.
Oh, together.
Nanobots that help us fight off diseases. Merging with robots before they don't need us. Multiverses and dimensions unseen. These are a futurist's favorite things. When there's Luddites.
Blood bites. Well,
Luddite?
Futurist, did I not tell you that new ideas are strictly forbidden in this house?
Well, the children were upset by that stupid rule, so I thought... You did, sir.
And do you or do you not have difficulty understanding such stupidity?
Only during thinking time, sir.
Liesel?
yes,
I don't
Father.
recall seeing proof of humans teleported.
Oh, really? Well, as a matter of fact...
Yes?
Well, I was...
What she would like to say, Luddite, is that scientists have been teleporting information between entangled photons. Not humans. Not yet, anyway. Come along, children. You heard the Luddite. Go stick your head in the sand immediately.
Futurist, you don't seem to remember that I'm against all these ideas. Is it also possible you don't remember that I'm the one with all the money? And therefore any changes are a threat to my power and control?
Luddite? Well, I wonder if before you go I could talk to you about some computers for the children.
What
to
did I
help them
just
learn.
say?
If I could just have raw material.
You know I'm against all technologies, not the least of which are computers.
But the children.
Yes, and I'm a Luddite. Good night.
Oh.
Molecular manufacturing machines. When there's Luddites, talk of grey girls, then I'm feeling sad. I simply remember to read Kurzweil books, and then I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, and I laughed out loud when I heard the line that we've just heard. Instead of when the dog bites, when there's Luddites. I like that beat a lot.
I did try to match it up, like even what I said, because in this song I think it says something like newspaper packages tied up in strings. So I wrote scientists and their theory of brilliant scientists and their theory of strings. So I tried to match it up.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I enjoyed that one. I like. I think again it relates. It puts something that people aren't as familiar with, life extension concepts or techno-futurist concepts more broadly in a relatable context. And I think I thank you again for doing that.
Well, you're welcome. I mean, that is my goal. Look, the reason I make these, lighthearted is because most of the time Hollywood, when they do anything, well, they have to for dramatic purposes. They make conflict, and it's usually dystopic, and it's the humans versus the robots or something, and then the humans win, which is preposterous in a way if you think it out. But whatever. But there's no reason, because one thing that it seems to get lost. And even in conferences, people always say, well, what if the AI treats us like insects or so on and so. But one thing Ray points out in all his books, it's not going to be an us against them. It's going to be us merging with them. Humans always want to have an advantage. They always want to have some betterment if they can. I mean, even if you think back to the 70s when breast implants, I mean, for women to, it was so sad that women were putting potentially cancerous things in their bodies to try to look better. Well, that just shows you that something like vanity or whatever was going through their minds shows you that people are willing to take risks for any kind of advantage. Or men taking steroids for baseball. You know, people want advantages. So imagine that we're going to have the ability to have like a neurolace or something where we can think millions of times better or faster, or have, you know, analysis bots in our heads where we can think and analyze things quick. We're going to want that. And we're going to, when we build that kind of AI, and if we can put that into us and merge with that, everybody's going to want to do that. It's not going to be us against them. We're going to be the robots. We will be eventually.
And we should say of Neuralace that it is wetware. It is a surgical procedure, but it would be an outpatient procedure, something less invasive than what we just mentioned with these other elective surgeries.
Oh yeah.
And there's these a couple of micro threads going into a little hole. It's really not that big of a surgery. You know, it's been framed in terms of something for quadriplegics or people currently who are in some kind of locked-in state as a result of some other kind of disorder. But that I think should be allowed for everyone, and should be it's supposed to be at a relatively low price point. The actual the surgical thing, something like going to the shopping mall and getting LASIK, a few $100s maybe.
That's a good example too, LASIK.
Yeah. That's one that's you know, I'm all for. I haven't personally done elective surgeries. I don't have tattoos for much the same reason. Gunks up your lymph node system.
No, I don't either. Yeah.
But I'm all for people getting in those sandboxes and doing what they will. I think that people are oddly enough more open to some of those things that would maybe be on the spectrum of being a little more frivolous than the the kind of transhumanist upgrades that we're talking about. You know, so it's always good to keep an open mind about these things.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm looking forward to all this stuff, man. I think it can't come fast enough. I think Neuralace is great, but I think you're going to see, you know, eventually we're going to have it where it's just nanobots that can just go right onto our neurons and transmit thoughts faster than our chemical processes do now. So we will be able to think thousands of times faster, and it'll be a lot less invasive. A nanobots are tinier than our cells. We can ingest them. They could just float right in, or drink them, or inhale them, or, you know, nasal spray or whatever. But the point is, it's going to be a lot easier to have those eventually when we do get them. And that's going to really be a huge transformation, because there's a lot of uses for that kind of technology for our brain, as well as fighting off our diseases and all sorts of things that Ray talks about in Kurzweil books. So that was the last parody video I did, by the way.
Yeah. The others are originals. And I like the Arthur C. Clarke appearance in The Death of Death. He was definitely somebody who shaped a lot of my ideas, proto-transhumanist and extropian ideas. So I liked he kind of showed up in there. I enjoyed that.
Well, that came, that's actually the latest one I've done now. The one I did, if we want to go in sequence, what happened was, so Radfest started, and Jim Stroll, the guy who's the coordinator and the founder of basically Radfest and putting together the Coalition for Radical Life Extension. He had contacted me. He said he really liked the I am the very model of a Singularitarian video. And he told me, hey, we're having this thing called Radfest. This was back in 2015. He said they're going to have it in 2016. And he said, would you want to write a song for that? I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And so what happened was I said, well, what is it, Radfest? He says, well, it's about radical life extension. Well, when he said those words, it sounded like a song to me. Like the word radical is pretty powerful. You know, radical, it just sounds like it should be in a song, right? So I thought, okay, that's great. I started thinking about it. We met at a conference. It might have been a Alcor conference. It was some conference out west, and I live in Chicago. So I literally wrote the song on the plane ride home. I just had it all in my head. I was like, oh, this is good. And then I thought, well, you know what? It's a conference, so probably a video. And then I was looking at who he had as far as speakers go. And it looked like, and it turned out he had Suzanne Summers as one of the speakers. Mm-hmm. Well, Suzanne Summers was the most famous TV actress in the 1970s from that TV show, Three's Company. And now she's written a bunch of books about, you know, life extension, so to speak. And I thought, wow, okay. I tried to ask them, could I get her to be in the video? I mean, it's for your conference, right? But she was very busy and she really couldn't do it. But I found out that she had a granddaughter named Camellia Summers, and she's an actress. She was an actress on TV shows. She was on Bold and Beautiful TV show. So I contacted her agent, which was her mom, which was Suzanne Summers' daughter-in-law. Anyway, I contacted her. I said, hey, look, I want to do this video. I would like to, you know, see if Camellia would like to be in it because we're going to show it where Suzanne's going to be. And oh, my God, yeah, we'd love to. So I managed to get Suzanne Summers' granddaughter to play the part of a little old lady. And that's when I created this character called Dr. Radlex. Obviously meaning radical life extension, Radlex, right? And I put two A's in there, Radlex, because that's what RADFest is, which stands for Revolution Against Aging and Dying. That's what RAD stands for RADFest. So I created this character called Dr. Radlex. And in this video, I wanted to show about how we can, you know, do life extension, but I also wanted to show how there are people that are against it. And so in the video, I created something called the Luddite Police. And it's supposed to be a little bit in the future where you have this Luddite patrol and they go around trying to stop these technologies because they just can't handle it. So that's the premise to that video called Radical Life Extension. We want to show that one.
Doesn't matter how old we might be now, pretty soon we'll all know exactly how to slow down the damage that is bringing us down and speed up the process that'll keep us around. Gene therapy is now coming out strong. Nanobots in our blood, it won't be long. Replacing our organs just like parts on cars. Living past the century will soon be ours. Radical life extension. Radical life extension. Eternal health is our intention. With radical life extension, living on and on and on and on and on, living on and on and on and on and on, living on and on and on. Aging is a symptom of us being alive. Doesn't mean we can't alter the way that we thrive. But if there's no cure and you're about to die, cryostasis is a chance to give you more time. Even if you're doubting it, still give it a try. I guarantee there's no chance being buried or fried. In the future, nanobots will get deep inside, repairing everything until you're back alive. Radical life extension. Radical life extension. Eternal health is our intention. With radical life extension, living on and on and on and on and on, living on and on and on, living on and Radical life extension. Radical life extension. Eternal health is our intention. With radical life extension, living on and on and on and on and on, living on and on and on and on and on, radical, living radical life extension. Radical life extension.
And in that video, something that was striking was the reverse aging, filter that you used, the effect that you used on this young lady's face. It kind of brings to mind this project that I'm working on. I'm working on a project, a mini documentary about myself having a techno-spiritualist experience, reconnecting with my grandfather who passed in 2015 via virtual reality and this deep fake virtual reality experience, sort of a digital seance almost. And so when I saw that you used that in another video as well, that sort of a face app kind of effect, I enjoyed that, and it was well done. I had almost,
good, thanks. Yeah. By the way, that was before FaceApp ever existed. We did that, what, three years ago.
So, how'd you do it?
I mean, it wasn't that hard. FaceApp isn't even that hard to do. It was just a special effect. That it was actually the videographers that did it. Ken Gums and Matt. His name's in the credits.
Going back like 30 or 40 years, people in Hollywood were doing stuff like that. They could do some of that stuff even in camera with particular kinds of fades and things.
Yeah.
But it
wasn't that difficult to do, but it was fun to do.
Yeah,
and it worked for what I wanted to do. So that was a very successful video. They really liked it a lot. So Radfest, the following year, they invited me back, and they said, "Well," I said, "All right, look, I'll tell you what, I'll do another video. Can't show the same one, but we could. But I probably want a new one." So but I wanted to have a more of an international flair because Radfest was attracting people from around the world, and so I was doing some research, and I found out that the Hindi word for future is bhavishya. And it's a pretty word, and it sounds cool, and it even flows off the tongue, bhavishya. It just sounds great. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do another video, and I'm going to show about how, futuristic technology is going to help advance things. But I also wanted to show not only that it's going to make our lives better and how we'll end up being robotics and all that, but I also wanted to show how it's going to affect us in a social way. In other words, women, for example, were subjugated forever, right? It was always this patriarchal society of the world that basically controlled women and put them in terrible positions in life. I mean, they didn't even get the vote in the United States until early part of the 20th century. So that's embarrassing in a way for our democracy. But so what I wanted to show was that this kind of technology is very democratizing in the sense it's so much about our brains and information that as long as you're smart, you're equal, and it will make us all more appreciative of one another, and no one's going to, and you can see it's already happening. The information, social media has allowed the Me Too movement to really empower women. So I'm happy for that. And this video, I wanted to show that too. So I flipped the time back all the way to like an imaginary king. By the way, his name is King Olden Days. And it starts at 1045, the year 1045 on purpose, because obviously 1,000 years later would be 2045, and that's when Kurzweil predicts the singularity. So you'll see in this video where I play the wizard and also the king, but and I rap in this video. I wanted to challenge myself musically, but it really is. It's not only about futuristic technologies, but it's also a social statement. So if you want to watch that one, we'll show that one.
And like the Death of Death, it's a life extensionist piece, something that's close to both of our hearts. I enjoyed that.
The year was 1045 AD, and the lecherous King Olden Days was not happy about getting old and being ignored by his harem of girls, so he summoned his wizard for a solution.
Life extension, death
prevention, this is all the rage. Everybody wanting it, cause no one wants to age. The future's right around the corner, so just keep on hanging in. Price point keeps on dropping so that everyone gets in.
The future is coming faster. Technology, we must guide you all the past. I'm moving to the future, I'm heading for robotics. I'm gonna be a cyborg, so no need for narcotics. I'm gonna make my own fate, gonna buy myself more time. Gonna change my very substrate, cause I never wanna die.
I wanna live forever, I wanna be young, and I want all of them to like me. When you mention life extension, you'll be met with apprehension, cause the history we're entrenched in puts it past their comprehension. Yet no matter their rejection, when there's chance for intervention, there's no doubt and there's no question, it's their strongest of intention to achieve long life extension.
The future's exponential, it happens everywhere. It is life extension, means we are here to robotics. I'm gonna be a cyborg, so no need for narcotics. I'm gonna make my own fate, gonna buy myself more time. Gonna change my very substrate, cause I never wanna die.
Brevity of 70 is not what's called longevity. 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, then more. That's the kind of life extension we're all fighting for. Fighting off attrition, using calorie restriction, warding off any affliction, cause survival's our addiction.
The future's exponential, it happens everywhere. It is life extension, means we are here to stay.
So do you have a repertory company, a group of actors that you like to work with? Is that?
No, I not real. I mean, I like working with all of them, but I don't have a repertory company. I mean, there's a couple people that I know very well that end up recurring in these videos, so they're always helpful and handy to do it. Yeah, in fact, let's see. Yeah, in this Bavishya video, one of the harem girls is actually going to be in the next video.
Oh, nice. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one, and I like the sort of thing where we're getting life extension ideas out there in a fun way, and I like your musical style. I like the comic operetta stuff.
Well, yeah. Some people think it's campy. I think it is too, but I don't care. I think it's funny.
Yeah.
I like doing them. I try to make it, clear to the point. I even incorporated some Indian words or Hindi words in that video, Bhavishya. So because I was trying to make it universal, and it was a lot of fun. And it was also kind of be careful what you wish for thing, where the king wanted all these wishes, and then he ended up, they all came true, but not in the way he wanted it, like the monkey's paw story. So the last video is called The Death of Death.
Wait, we did The Death of Death. We have the Radical Life Extension.
No, I think you did Radical Life Extension, right?
Oh, we did?
Yeah,
okay.
That was the one with Camellia Summers.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Okay. I thought The Death of Death was okay. Well, we'll get the last one coming up now. Go ahead. Do you want to set that up?
Well, The Death of Death is actually about cryonics. And the idea is, so there was a movie by a famous director called Ingmar Bergman, who was a very famous European, Swedish director. He made a movie called The Seventh Seal back in 1957. Sure, and the movie was based on the idea of a knight that goes off to fight in the Crusades, and he comes back to his homeland in Northern Europe and Sweden, and he's looking around. It's like 12th century, and he realizes that there's a big wipeout of the population because of the bubonic plague, and he is thinking about existentialism and death, and he's walking along the beach pondering this, and he looks ahead of him and he sees death, who's in the form of the Grim Reaper with his black hood and all, and he realizes death is coming for him. So in that movie, or in historical legend, the idea was that this knight knew that death had an affinity for playing chess. So he thought, oh, I'll challenge death to a game of chess to buy more time. Mm-hmm. With the idea that if he can win, maybe he can get more time, or he can do whatever, and maybe live longer or something. Well, in that movie, of course, being that it was supposed to be in the 12th century, there was no real chance for him to win because death, we didn't have any kind of cure and nothing. So what I wanted to do was kind of take that concept, but update it. And so in this video, you'll see where, I incorporated certain, like obviously cryonics, you'll see that in there, but I also threw in something that Ray Kurzweil mentions quite often in his videos or in his talks about how he predicted in 1990, he predicted that because of the growth of exponential technologies, which he doesn't just guess, he actually plots it out on a graph and is able to calculate where things are going to be as far as computational powers go. So he was able to determine that it would be about 7 or 8 years when there would be computer programs in the chess games that would be able to beat grandmaster champions. And he predicted in 1990 that grandmaster champions would be defeated by computer chess programs. Well, as it turned out, almost exactly on point, maybe a year sooner, IBM came out with Deep Blue, and Deep Blue went up against Garry Kasparov, who was the grandmaster champion at the time, and it defeated Kasparov, and it defeated him soundly. And so Kasparov got mad and left and everything, and then and when he came back in the room, they said, "Well, what do you think?" He says, "Well, I stand corrected," because he had claimed that there was no way that could happen. And what came from that was a lot of reporters said, "Well, it appears that Ray Kurzweil knows more about computers than Kasparov knows about chess." but it always stuck in my head about that. So I thought, okay, if I do this video, I want to incorporate a little bit about that IBM thing. So anyway, it's in there. You'll see the part. If you want to play this one, Death of Death, oh, and by the way, I also made an homage to Jose Cordero's book, which was called La Muerte de la Muerte, which is The Death of Death. And I also incorporated Arthur C. Clarke, because Arthur C. Clarke, who's, like you said, a great science fiction writer, one of my favorites too, he talked about cryonics, and he said how it's very possible that it could work. He said it's certainly not impossible. So I include that quote right in the opening, and also I included his face in the video. So he plays the grandfather that passed away. So you'll see his little picture in there, which I got that picture from Jose Cordero, who had interviewed him at the Transvision conference I went to back in 2005. So, you know, it always comes back around, you know. So anyway, that's the video. If you want to watch it, you can show that one.
I asked my grandmother, where did grandfather go? And she replied, he went to heaven, child. That's where we all will go when we get old. We all must die.
But things are different now. Science has changed it all. And getting old is age-old fallacy. There's a new lease on life. So if tragedy strikes and things are at the worst they'll ever be, we can try one thing more when death is right at the door. We can preserve ourselves cryonically. Don't know if it works for sure yet, but it's a much smarter bet. Giving yourself a plan B. So I say, heaven can wait for another day. It's not my fate to go away. Heaven can wait for another day. Let death take a holiday. I saw the news today. Tragic. So many died of some disease.
Scientists are baffled as they continue to search for a cure. Sources say
they buried all the dead. While I thought in my head these tragedies don't have to be. Things are different now. Science has changed it all. And being buried is a travesty. Now we don't have to go. We'll just be put on hold and realize this new reality. We'll freeze them and then we'll store them until we find a cure for them. Then they can return to a future advanced society. Now I'm thinking we'll live forever. Chances are much, much better. Approaching immortality.
one more time.
Heaven can wait for another day. It's not my fate to go away. Heaven can wait for another day. It's not my fate to go away. Heaven can wait. Heaven can wait. Heaven can wait. Go away. Heaven can wait. Go away. Heaven can wait. Heaven can wait. Heaven can wait. Go away. Heaven can wait. Heaven can wait. Holiday.
That was all of the videos. I'm glad we got to talk. I'm glad I got to talk about you to you about life extension and all of these things. You have so many insights and anecdotes about this world. And thank you again for all that you've done in just bringing a little levity to this area where sometimes people go to the darkest place they can think of with it. People who are not versed in this, and sometimes, when I talk about the Transhumanist Party, people they're not willing to take the time to think about what it is that we're trying to promote. They want to immediately go to these dystopic narratives or something. And I think that being able to just talk about these emerging technologies of today and how that might change people's lives is an important part, but also doing it in such a way that's not going to bring out people's the worst in people, which I think you really have a flair for. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm gonna keep making these. I'm gonna make more of them. I'm gonna keep spreading the word. I should mention that I'm going to be this weekend. I'll be at the Cryonic Symposium International in Florida at the Church of Perpetual Life, which is hosted by Neil Vandery and Rudy Hoffman. There's going to be a lot of cryonists from all around the world there talking about it. I'll be showing that last one, Death of Death, and I'm also hosting Transvision 2020 in Los Angeles next year. Ray Kurzweil, surprisingly, is confirmed as a speaker, as is all the other people we mentioned earlier, Aubrey de Grey and all those good guys. Also, I want to mention one more thing. Those 3 last videos that we showed, they were sponsored by a good friend of mine. Her name is Ray Lewis, short for Rachel, but his name is Ray Lewis. She was the producer. She's actually afflicted with multiple sclerosis, which is very sad. She's had it for about 10 years, but she really believes in this movement. And together, we're going to be starting an organization called the Institute to Exponentially Expedite the Singularity. And because we want to make this thing happen sooner rather than later. So you'll be hearing more about that once we get that thing going. And in the meantime, I look forward to seeing you hopefully winning.
Yeah, hopefully.
Because I read up, I watched your interviews, I read your biography. I think you'd be more than qualified to be president as the Transhumanist Party candidate. And then,
Well, thank you for your support.
Well, you got mine. So
I have a feeling, some of the people who've been in this race, they've said in these interviews that they'd never even heard of radical life extension before a few months ago, or the other competitor, she said that she didn't think that life extension was the most important on her list of techno-optimist interests. And I said, there's a lot of things that we can talk about, but to my mind, life extension is number one. It's the thing that unites people in this community, and it's the thing that we should be talking about. So I'm glad I got to change gears with it a little bit, because just talking about the policy stuff, it gets to the heart of my campaign strategy, but it doesn't get to the heart of the motivation for doing something like this. And I think that motivation is something that you and I have in common.
Oh, absolutely. And you're right. I did listen to some of the other candidates, and yeah, I did see that was an issue where that wasn't their forefront, and it is yours. So I think you kind of fit the bill perfectly to be the person to be the candidate. You got my endorsement, so good luck.
Thank you, sir. well, thanks again. Thanks again, Charlie Kam. It was great finally sitting down and talking with you. And let's do this again sometime.
Absolutely. All right. Me too. We had a great time.